The courtroom froze. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, smirk carved across his face like he'd already won. His eyes locked on Judge Judy, unblinking, defiant, dripping with arrogance. "You can't touch me," he declared, loud enough for everyone to hear. For a heartbeat, she didn't move. No anger, no outrage, just a shift. Small, precise, dangerous. It wasn't fury, it was certainty. Everyone braced for her explosion, but she didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She spoke one sentence. And in that instant, the smirk vanished, the color drained from his face, because Judge Judy had just revealed something about him no one else in the room knew. The air in the courtroom still vibrated with the echo of that one sentence. The sentence that drained the color from Marcus Hale's face. His smirk had been carved deep a moment ago, smug and immovable, but now it flickered like a candle fighting wind. Judge Judy did not look away from him. She did not blink. Her eyes stayed fixed, calm as stone, sharp as a blade resting in its sheath. The room waited. Even the walls seemed to lean in. Marcus shifted in his chair, the first break in his posture since he swaggered through the entrance earlier. His arms uncrossed, his jaw tightened. He tried adjusting himself back into that position of arrogance, but confidence is not a pose. It is an instinct. And his had just been shaken. Judge Judy folded her hands, elbows resting lightly on the bench. "Mr. Hale," she said, voice steady, "you are certain you want to stand by the statement you just made?" He swallowed, the movement stiff and visible. Yes, Your Honor." The arrogance tried to crawl back into his tone. But it landed softer this time, brittle around the edges. Across the room, Dana Ruiz watched him with a mix of nerves and quiet anticipation. Her fingers hugged a worn green folder so tightly the color seemed to fade beneath her grip. She had not said much yet. She barely dared to breathe. This moment was something she'd been waiting for longer than she cared to admit. Months of unanswered calls, months of being dismissed, gaslit, made to question her own memory. Her eyes flicked to Judy as the judge leaned forward. "You said," Judy began, slow and deliberate, "that you drafted your own service contract." Marcus nodded, a small edge of pride flickering back into his expression. "That's correct." "And you said," she continued, "that you memorized every clause of it." "Yes," he replied, leaning back again just an inch, trying to reclaim his earlier swagger. "I know my own paperwork." Silence stretched, a silence that felt purposeful, heavy. Then Judy turned her attention to Dana. "Ms. Ruiz," she said, "let me see your copy." Dana stepped forward as if approaching a cliff's edge. Her breath trembled, her hands shaking slightly as she extended the folder. Judy accepted it with quiet precision, opening the top page as though peeling back a lie. "Interesting," she murmured. Marcus's eyes twitched. What does it say?" Judy didn't answer him. Instead, she looked up, pinning him with a stare that made the room hold its breath again. "Mr. Hale, when I ask for your copy of this contract," she said, "you're going to hand it to me without delay, without excuses, and without theatrics." Her voice stayed soft, dangerously soft. Marcus froze. His hand hovered over his briefcase. Too slow, far too slow. Dana felt the shift, the subtle turning of the tide. Judy tapped the folder lightly. "Bring me your contract, now." Marcus finally unclasped the briefcase, but he hesitated. Just 1 second. One small, trembling second. And in Judge Judy's courtroom, 1 second is all it takes to expose a lie. Marcus reaches inside the briefcase, but his hand stops just short of touching the contract. The hesitation was small, A flicker, a breath, a pause in motion. But in a courtroom this tense, it landed like a siren. Marcus's fingers hovered above the contract inside his briefcase, suspended as if the paper might burn him. The room reacted before he did. A few raised brows, a murmur shifting through the benches like wind brushing over dry leaves. Judge Judy did not move. Her patience was deliberate, sharpened, almost surgical. "Mr. Hale," she said, voice quiet enough to make the silence louder. "The contract." His hand jerked, and he pulled the document out, but only halfway. The edges peeked above the leather case like an animal too frightened to emerge. "This is the only copy I have," he muttered. "It's, fragile." Dana Ruiz's breath caught. She knew that tone. She had heard it in every voicemail, in every dismissive email, that slippery dance of excuses masquerading as professionalism. The folder in her lap warmed under her grip, her knuckles pale from holding it too tightly. Judge Judy extended her hand. "Put it on the podium. Now." Marcus stood, stiff and jerky, walking the contract forward as though delivering a confession. He placed it on the podium with exaggerated care, as if gentleness could mask reluctance. Judy reached for it with steady fingers. The way she lifted it, precise, measured, made Marcus's breath hitch. She opened it to the first page, scanning silently. Then, "Mr. Hale," she said, tone unchanged. "This page number doesn't match the version Ms. Ruiz provided." Dana's head snapped up. Marcus blinked too fast. That must be a printing difference," he offered too quickly. "Maybe her copy is outdated." Judy looked at him over the rim of her glasses, and the room felt smaller for it. "She has the contract you emailed her yourself. How exactly would her version be outdated?" The question cut cleanly. Marcus's throat bobbed as he stumbled for an answer. "Well, I mean, people misprint things, you know? Clients don't always read carefully." Dana flinched, his words scraping old wounds. She had read everything. Twice. She had begged him to read it too. Judy returned her attention to the page. "Do you remember the payment clause?" she asked. "Yes," he snapped quickly, sensing an opening to regain footing. "Yes, of course I do." "Then explain it." He opened his mouth, closed it. A beat passed. He tried again, choosing words the way someone chooses stones to build a bridge they know will collapse. "The clause states that payments are, non-refundable unless the client fails to— No, unless we fail to— Well, it depends on the service type, I suppose." Dana watched the unraveling begin. Judge Judy's brow lifted a millimeter, enough to silence the entire room. "So you do not actually know your own contract?" Marcus sputtered. I wrote it." "Then you should remember it," she replied, tone razor thin. Dana swallowed hard, stepping forward with her folder. "Your Honor, I have my copy." Judy nodded. "Bring it." Dana approached, her hands trembling, not with fear but with something blooming beneath it. Validation. She handed Judy the document. But tucked behind it, half hidden, was something else. Another sheet of paper. Something Marcus recognized instantly. His face drained again. Judy's eyes lowered to the extra document behind Dana's contract, and she reached for it. The extra sheet slid into view like truth slipping through a cracked door. Judge Judy paused, her fingers resting lightly on the edge of the document. The room felt it, the shift, the pull, the silent tightening of tension that happens just before a dam breaks. Marcus's breath stuttered. Dana didn't move. Even the bailiff leaned in just slightly, eyes narrowing. Judy lifted the hidden page, separating it from the contract with slow, deliberate care. "Mr. Hale," she said softly, "what is this?" He blinked, too fast. A misunderstanding. Judy did not let him breathe. I did not ask you for a definition. I asked you what this is. Dana's hands twisted together, the memory of that paper heavy in her chest. She had debated for weeks whether to bring it. It was not part of the official contract, but it was part of the truth. Judy scanned the page, and her expression barely changed, but something in the air did, like a wire tightening. It appears, she said, to be an email. Marcus swallowed audibly. Yes, but she took it out of context. Judy lifted a hand. Not loudly, not harshly, just decisively enough to cut him clean. This is a refund promise, Mr. Hale. A murmur rippled from the gallery. Dana closed her eyes, the sound washing over her like a quiet vindication she never expected to feel. It is not what it looks like, Marcus insisted, edges of panic sharpening his tone. I sent that before we finalized things. It wasn't official. Judy's gaze snapped to him. You told this court you never offered her a refund. He stiffened. I didn't. That's a draft. Dana's eyes widened. He had said the same thing to her. Months ago. The lie had the same rhythm. A draft? Judy repeated. Then why does it include the exact dollar amount she asked for? And why is it time-stamped after your service date? Marcus's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The silence was louder than any objection he could have made. Judy placed the email on the podium between them, like a piece of evidence in a crime documentary. Mr. Hale, she said, you claimed you personally wrote every line of your contract. You claimed you never offered a refund. And yet this, she tapped the paper, is your signature. His voice shrank. People change their minds. Indeed, Judy replied, but the truth does not. Dana felt something inside her loosen, not anger, not triumph, but relief, the kind that comes when the weight finally slides off after months of pushing back alone. Judy turned to her. Ms. Ruiz, you have a second copy of this email, correct? Dana nodded and stepped forward again, but this time she was not trembling. Marcus's eyes darted between them, searching for a foothold that no longer existed. His confidence was not just cracking, it was collapsing. Judy looked at Dana's copy, then at him. You insisted the dates on your version were correct, she said. Let us test that. She tapped the desk. Hand me your original email, Mr. Hale. Marcus froze. Dana stepped back as Judy reached toward the podium, and Marcus's hand stayed glued to his briefcase, refusing to move. The silence thickened as Marcus's hand refused to leave the safety of his briefcase. It was not hesitation anymore. It was fear wearing the mask of stubbornness. Judge Judy watched him for a long, unbroken second, the kind of second that exposes more truth than an hour of questioning. Mr. Hale, she said quietly, bring me the email. His fingers tightened around the leather handle, knuckles bleaching. Your Honor, I do not have it printed. Dana's breath caught. That was a lie, the kind she recognized by sound alone. He always claimed he didn't have it, right up until he threatened her with it later. Judy turned her head slightly, as if she were listening to a distant echo. You told this court every customer email was printed and stored for your records. Marcus blinked hard, scrambling for footing on a floor turning to ice beneath him. Well, I must have forgotten that one. It was too late. The courtroom had heard it, the first clean fracture in his armor. Judy leaned back, the movement small but devastating. Forgotten, she repeated, letting the words settle like dust in the air. Remarkable timing. Dana's palms grew damp against the green folder she still held. Something inside it was waiting. something she'd carried for months, unsure if anyone would ever ask for it. "Ms. Ruiz," Judy said, her gaze shifting but her tone remaining firm. "Do you have the email thread in full?" Dana nodded. It was not confidence, not yet, but it was courage. She stepped forward, opening her folder carefully as though unveiling something fragile. Several pages slid into view. Printed emails, highlighted sections, timestamps glowing in faded yellow ink. But that was not all. Beneath the stack lay a second item, a separate document sealed in a transparent sleeve. A silence moved through the courtroom like a slow wave as Dana placed everything on the podium. Judy lifted the first page, the familiar refund email Marcus insisted was only a draft. Then she lifted the next, and the next. Her eyes narrowed with each line she read. "These," she said slowly, "paint a very different picture than the one you presented, Mr. Hale." Marcus tried a weak laugh, but it cracked. "Your Honor, she's manipulating the order. These are out of sequence, Judy held up a hand again. "The timestamps are sequential, and this," she tapped a highlighted line, "shows you acknowledged fault before she ever filed a complaint." He stiffened, sweat beginning to bead at his temple. People write things they do not mean under pressure. Judy studied him. "Pressure?" she echoed. "Ms. Ruiz simply asked for a refund." Dana felt her throat tighten. That part had haunted her most, how something so reasonable became a storm she couldn't escape. Then Judy reached for the transparent sleeve. "What is this?" Dana's voice wavered. "Something he sent later. Something he said would fix everything if I kept quiet." The murmur that followed was electric. Even Marcus's breath halted. Judy slid the paper out, a printed screenshot of a message Marcus swore he never sent. Her eyes lifted slowly to his. "Mr. Hale, you sent more than one email, didn't you?" Marcus's face collapsed into panic. That is not." Judy placed the screenshot flat on the podium, leaned forward, and said, "Tell this courtroom what you wrote, or I will read it myself." The paper lay on the podium like a confession waiting to breathe. Judge Judy's fingers rested on its edge, still, steady, unhurried, the kind of stillness that means danger. Marcus Hale stared at it as though it might detonate. In a way, it already had. "Mr. Hale," Judy said, voice low but carrying through the courtroom, "read the first line aloud." His throat moved, a dry, uneven swallow. "Your Honor, there is no need to—" "There is every need," she replied, slicing through his objection without raising her voice. "Read it." Marcus hesitated. Dana Ruiz watched him, with her breath trapped somewhere high in her chest. She had listened to him lie so convincingly for months that part of her still feared he'd find a way to escape the truth, now. Marcus lifted the page with shaking fingers. The confident smirk he'd swaggered in with was gone. In its place sat a tight, quivering line. He began, "Dana, I know things went wrong, but please give me a chance to fix this before it becomes a legal problem." The room inhaled sharply. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun. Judy leaned forward. "So you did acknowledge fault?" Marcus shook his head violently. No, that is not what I meant. That email was— It was a draft, Your Honor. I never meant to send it." Judy tapped the timestamp. "Then explain why the message shows as delivered, read, and followed by 3 additional comments from you." Dana closed her eyes for a moment, letting the truth settle inside her like a weight she no longer had to hold alone. Marcus stumbled. I was trying to calm her down. She was getting aggressive." Dana's eyes widened. Aggressive. The word struck her like a slap. She had been terrified, not aggressive. Judy's gaze sharpened. "Aggressive? She asked for her refund once. That is not the whole story, Marcus insisted, voice rising. She kept pushing me, threatening to hurt my business. Dana stepped forward unexpectedly, the sound of her voice trembling but clear. I asked you for my money back. That was all. The gallery shifted. Even the bailiff's jaw tightened. Judy returned to the email. This message, Mr. Hale, contradicts every statement you have made to this court. You claimed she fabricated the refund conversation. You claimed she pressured you. You claimed this entire ordeal was a misunderstanding. Marcus's voice collapsed into a whisper. I was trying to protect myself. From what? Judy asked. Being held accountable? He opened his mouth, but the words tangled in his throat. Judy moved to the next page. And then, after she did not respond to your first message, you sent her this. She began reading aloud. You're putting me in a bad position. I can make this refund happen, but only if we keep this off the record. A ripple of disgust moved through the room. Marcus's shoulders sagged, the weight of exposure dragging him down inch by inch. I did not mean it like that. Then how did you mean it? Judy asked. Because this sounds like coercion. Dana's hands tightened around her folder, knuckles pale. She hadn't wanted to hear those words again, but hearing them spoken by someone who finally believed her, someone with power, felt like oxygen. Judy lifted one more page, a page Marcus instantly recognized. The fear in his eyes sharpened like a blade. This, she said, is the message you sent the next morning, correct? Marcus froze. Judy held the page mid-air and said, Mr. Hale, did you threaten Miss Ruiz after she refused to stay silent? The words hung in the air like a dropped match. Did you threaten Ms. Ruiz? For the first time since he stepped into the courtroom, Marcus did not have a rehearsed smirk ready. His mouth opened, but the sound that came out was a fragile, cracking, no. Too fast. Too stiff. Too rehearsed. Judge Judy saw it instantly. So did the audience. Even the bailiff's posture sharpened, as if the truth had shifted the temperature of the room. Judy lowered the page, but didn't set it down. Then we will listen together, she said, and determine whether your definition of no aligns with reality. Dana's fingers trembled as she reached into her folder, pulling out her phone. The screen was spiderwebbed with faint scratches, proof of the nights she gripped it too tightly, afraid to check voicemail, afraid not to. Ms. Ruiz, Judy said, please bring the device here. Dana stepped forward slowly, her heartbeat loud in her ears. She placed the phone on the podium as though surrendering something sacred and painful. Judy nodded to the bailiff. Play message 1. A soft click echoed through the room. Then Marcus's voice spilled out. Unmistakable even through the speaker's tinny distortion. Dana, listen. This is getting messy. You don't want that. I'm trying to give you a chance to walk away from this without problems. Gasps murmured through the gallery. The tone was smooth, too smooth, a silk layer stretched thin over steel. Marcus's face drained, his hands gripping the edges of the defendant's table. Your Honor, that sounds worse than it was. Judy held up a finger. Quiet. The voicemail continued. If you keep pushing this, I'm not responsible for what happens next. Let's keep this between us. Dana flinched. She remembered every word, how her stomach dropped, how she couldn't sleep, how she replayed it, wondering if she was imagining the threat because no one believed her before. When the message ended, the silence in the courtroom turned into something solid, something you could almost reach out and touch. Judy folded her hands. Mr. Hale, that was not persuasion. That was intimidation. Marcus tried to speak, but she didn't give him space. You told this court you never contacted her beyond basic customer service. That voicemail shows you escalating, pressing, manipulating." "It was just frustration," Marcus snapped, his voice cracking. "She wasn't cooperating." Dana's voice rose sharply, surprising even herself. "I asked for my refund. That's all I did." Judy turned toward Dana with a rare softness. "I know." Then she faced Marcus again, her expression turning back into granite. "And you responded with implied threats. That is not frustration. That is control." Marcus raked a hand through his hair, eyes darting, heart pounding visible at his throat. The arrogance he wielded like armor was falling apart, seam by seam. Fear had seeped in, and once fear enters, it does not leave quietly. "Play the next message," Judy instructed. Marcus jerked upright. "Next?" "There's no next," Dana whispered. "There is." The bailiff pressed another button. A second recording began. This one was shorter, sharper, colder. "We're not done. I'll fix this tomorrow. You and I will talk again, and you'll understand what's at stake." Dana looked away, jaw tight. Marcus clenched his teeth, desperate. "I didn't mean anything by that." Judy's stare sliced straight through him. "And yet you said it." Then she lifted the printed page, still in her hand, the one from the next morning. "You sent a written message after that voicemail. The one you were so eager for me not to read." She tapped the paper once, a sound like a death knell. Judy leaned forward. "Bring me the message he sent the next morning. All of it." The bailiff's steps echoed like a countdown as he returned the phone to Dana, giving her a small nod. Permission, reassurance, maybe both. Her fingers hovered over the screen for a moment before she tapped, finding the message she had once been too afraid to read twice. She handed it back with a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Judge Judy accepted the device gently, but the room felt the shift. This was no longer just evidence. This was revelation. "Message from the next morning," Judy announced. "Let's hear it." The bailiff pressed play, and Marcus's voice filled the courtroom again. But this time, the tone was different. No slick persuasion, no veiled menace. This voice was clipped, irritated, impatient. A man who believed he had regained control overnight. "Dana, about last night. You weren't supposed to save those messages?" A wave of disbelief rippled through the gallery. Dana's lips parted, the memory striking her all over again. The recording continued. "Look, I'll refund you, but only if you don't bring anyone else into this. If people hear what I said, it'll sound bad. I need you to drop this. You have no idea how much trouble you'll cause me." The message ended on a chilling silence, the kind that wasn't accidental. Judge Judy set the phone down as though it physically disgusted her. "Mr. Hale," she began, her voice unnervingly calm. "You told her she wasn't supposed to save those messages?" Marcus lifted his hands helplessly. I meant that they sounded worse than intended." "Then why?" Judy asked, cutting through his excuse. "Did you offer her a refund only if she stayed quiet about them?" He froze. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. The truth had wrapped itself around his throat. Dana's hands trembled at her sides. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't triumphant. She looked tired. Tired in a way only months of fear could carve into a person. Judy turned to her gently. "Ms. Ruiz, tell the court why you initially requested the refund." Dana drew a breath, held it for a moment. "He didn't finish the work I paid for," she said, voice steady. "And when I complained, he got angry. He told me I was being dramatic, that I didn't understand what I signed. I tried to talk to him calmly, but he just kept pushing me, dismissing me." Marcus snapped. "Because you kept exaggerating." Judy's gavel struck once, a crisp, stunning crack. "Do not interrupt her," Dana continued, quieter now. When I insisted on a refund, he stopped being dismissive and started being scary. That's when the messages began. The gallery shifted in unified discomfort. Marcus leaned forward desperately. Your Honor, she's twisting everything. Judy's head tilted, the gesture sharp enough to slice his sentence in half. Mr. Hale, you are unraveling, and you are revealing far more than you intend. She lifted the printed text, the one from the morning after the threats. It looked small, but the weight of it was enormous. Let's read this together, Judy said. A moment ago you claimed it was sarcasm. Let's see if the courtroom agrees. Marcus's eyes went wide with panic, breath shortening. Judy held the message up to the light and asked, You were confident a moment ago, Mr. Hale. Where did that confidence go? For the first time since he swaggered into the courtroom, Marcus Hale didn't look like a man in control. His shoulders hunched forward, his breathing shallow, his eyes flicking from Judge Judy to the message she held like a guilty secret suspended between them. Judge Judy didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply let the silence press down on him until even the air felt heavy. Then, with a deliberate calm that made the entire gallery lean in, she began to read the message aloud. If you keep making noise about this, you'll force me to take steps neither of us wants. I'm offering you a way out. Don't push me. The words landed like falling stones, not loud, but impossible to ignore. Dana's breath hitched. She remembered the moment she first read it, the jolt of fear, the sting of humiliation, the instinct to protect herself by shrinking. Judy lowered the page slowly. Sarcasm? She asked. This reads like coercion, Mr. Hale. Marcus shook his head, voice barely forming. I was venting. She stressed me out. That wasn't a threat. The gallery erupted in disbelieving murmurs. Even the bailiff's eyes narrowed, as if measuring the distance between frustration and fear, and finding Marcus miles past the line. Judy leaned forward, elbows resting lightly on the bench. You were frustrated, she repeated. So you responded by telling her, don't push me, and that you'd take steps she wouldn't like. That's not how I meant it, Marcus snapped, panic sharpening his tone. It's just business talk. People use strong language sometimes. Dana's voice, soft but unshaking, broke in. I was alone. I didn't feel safe. Something shifted in the courtroom, a perceptible tilt toward her, a collective recognition of the fear she had carried in silence. Judy turned toward Dana. And your fear, she said firmly, was justified. Marcus flinched. Judy reached for the subpoenaed business records that had arrived only minutes earlier, a thick envelope the bailiff had set on her bench. She opened it with a clean, crisp motion. Papers rustled like whispers of truth finally allowed into the room. Mr. Hale, she said, eyes scanning the pages, you claimed Ms. Ruiz was your only dissatisfied customer. Yes, he said quickly, too quickly. Yes, exactly. She's the only one who... Judy lifted a page. Then why? She asked. Are there 3 prior complaints filed with the State Consumer Bureau? The words struck him like a blow. His mouth fell open. No excuse arrived, no charm, no arrogance, just shock. Dana's breath trembled in her chest. She wasn't imagining the pattern. She wasn't exaggerating. She wasn't alone. Judy rose slightly from her seat, the robe shifting with authority as she placed one of the complaints beside the message he'd sent Dana. This complaint, she said, is from a woman who paid for your service and received nothing. You told her she misunderstood the contract, and you charged her extra fees she never authorized. Marcus's hand shot up, half plea, half panic. She lied. They all lied. People try to scam me all the time. Enough, Judy said. Not loud. Final. She lifted another document, a printed invoice from Marcus's company addressed to Dana. A line item was highlighted in neon yellow, additional on-site service fee, $150. Dana's voice cracked. I never ordered that. Judy nodded. I know. Marcus's breathing turned ragged. That's standard. I apply it to everyone. That, Judy interrupted, is the problem, Mr. Hale. Her voice sharpened just slightly, enough to slice through every last piece of denial he had left. You have been running a business built on intimidation and unauthorized charges, and you expected Ms. Ruiz to stay silent because the others did. He didn't answer. He couldn't. The power that once radiated off him like heat had collapsed into a shivering void. Judy set the invoice aside, her eyes never leaving him. This court cannot rely on your word when the documents arriving by the minute contradict everything you've claimed. The room held its breath. Judy placed the final page down and said, We subpoenaed your business records this morning, Mr. Hale, and they reveal something you didn't want seen. The bailiff set the thick manila envelope on the bench, like he was placing evidence in a crime drama. The weight of it hit the wood with a dull thud, a sound that carried finality. Marcus Hale's head jerked toward it, eyes widening before he could stop himself. Fear bloomed fast, raw, unfiltered. Judge Judy didn't even look at him at first. She calmly opened the envelope, the papers inside rustling like whispered confessions. She lifted the first document with 2 measured fingers and began to read. Her expression didn't change, but something in the room did, a pulse of anticipation rippling across every seat. This, she said, tapping the page once, is a ledger of your last 6 months of service calls. Marcus wet his lips. Yes, Your Honor, that's standard record-keeping. Judy continued, as if he hadn't spoken. Remarkable consistency in your additional fees. She lifted another sheet, the highlighted columns blinding in neon yellow. Every single client in this time period was charged the same unauthorized on-site service fee Ms. Ruiz mentioned. Everyone. Marcus swallowed hard, a sheen of sweat catching the courtroom lights. That's a coincidence. Judy looked up. The silence snapped tight. Coincidence, she repeated. 32 identical charges, on 32 different invoices? Marcus's jaw opened, but sound refused to follow. Dana Ruiz sat frozen, her fingertips pressed to her lips. For months, she'd wondered if she was overreacting, if she had misunderstood. Now the truth was laid out in black and white. She had been a single voice in a pattern too large to deny. Judy lifted another document. And this is interesting. A complaint filed 3 months before Ms. Ruiz ever contacted you. Marcus's shoulders tensed. People make stuff up all the time. That customer. She misunderstood. This customer, Judy said, her tone flattening into something colder, reported the exact same sequence of events: overcharging, refusal to refund, dismissive communication, and... She paused, letting the gravity sink in. A message telling her not to make noise. A ripple went through the gallery, shock turning into disgust. Dana's breath trembled. That phrase. That sickening phrase. He had recycled it like a script. Judy didn't stop. She pulled out a color-coded spreadsheet. Your business records show you escalated your intimidation tactics as soon as a customer asked for a refund. Some customers backed down immediately, others filed complaints, but every pattern leads back to one source. Her gaze locked onto Marcus. You. His facade crumpled a little more. Your Honor, it's all blown out of proportion. I didn't mean... No, Judy said, voice slicing through him. What you meant is irrelevant. What you did is documented. She laid each piece of evidence side by side, forming a timeline of deception that stretched across the bench like an autopsy report for his business practices. "Mr. Hale," she said slowly, "you insisted Ms. Ruiz was your only disgruntled client." "Yes," he whispered. Because that's what I remembered." Judy lifted the final page from the envelope. The courtroom leaned forward as one. "This," she said, "is a complaint filed by a customer who never received her service at all. Not only did she pay you, you charged her an additional fee after she demanded a refund." Marcus's face collapsed. Dana stared at him, her heart pounding. He wasn't careless. He wasn't overwhelmed. He was calculated, and the courtroom could finally see it. Judy held up the final complaint and asked, "Mr. Hale, explain why this customer filed a report months before Miss Ruiz ever met you." Marcus didn't answer at first. His mouth opened, then closed, like he was searching the air for a lie sturdy enough to stand on. But every lie he'd already told sat scattered across the bench. Invoices, complaints, emails, each one waiting to collapse onto the next. Judge Judy watched him with the quiet steadiness of someone who had seen this exact moment hundreds of times. The second arrogance realizes it has reached the edge of a cliff. "Well?" she asked. Marcus blinked. His voice came out too thin. I don't recall that complaint." Judy's brow lifted a millimeter. "Enough." "You don't recall it, yet the timestamp shows it was emailed directly to your business account, and the response came from your personal email address." Dana exhaled softly. She hadn't known that part. That he wasn't just negligent, but hands-on in every piece of the manipulation. Marcus's voice wobbled. Maybe an assistant responded using my account." Judy slid the printout closer to him. "Does this look like an assistant's signature?" His eyes dropped to the familiar sloppy scrawl at the bottom. His own. There was no escape hatch left, no rhetorical trapdoor to fall through. His face began to slacken into disbelief. Disbelief that he could be cornered, that someone finally had him pinned. Dana watched him crumble, not with triumph, but with the stunned quiet of someone who'd waited too long to be believed. Judy turned to the next document. "This spreadsheet," she said, tapping it, "shows you personally approved the unauthorized charges for every customer listed." Marcus's breath hitched. I didn't think anyone would..." "Would what?" Judy cut in. "Hold you accountable?" He had no answer. The courtroom felt colder. The air tighter. The gallery shifted forward as though gravity itself had changed. Everyone drawn into the slow-motion implosion happening on the defendant's side of the room. Judy wasn't finished. "Mr. Hale, you emailed Ms. Ruiz claiming you never issued refunds." She lifted another sheet. "Yet this line item shows you refunded 3 customers last year, but only after they filed formal complaints." Dana's eyes widened. That was new. He'd told her refunds weren't possible, not that they simply weren't convenient for him. Marcus gripped the edge of the defendant's table. "Your Honor, you don't understand. I was overwhelmed. I was juggling too many clients." Judy's voice sharpened. "Overwhelmed is not a defense for dishonesty." He opened his mouth. No sound came. It was happening. The collapse. Not sudden, not explosive. Slow. Visible, humiliating. Layer by layer, his fabricated empire peeled away in front of everyone. Dana felt a strange tightness in her chest. She had imagined this moment so many times, but reality felt different. Sadder. More human. Marcus looked less like the monster she had feared, and more like a man who'd built a tower of deceit tall enough to crush himself. Judy glanced down at the stack of complaints again. "You know what this shows me, Mr. Hale?" His voice broke. "What?" "That Ms. Ruiz wasn't your first victim." He flinched, And she wouldn't have been your last. The words hit him harder than any gavel could. Then Judy reached for the folder again, the page she hadn't revealed yet. Dana felt her stomach drop. Something was coming. Something bigger. Judy asked the clerk to bring forward the photograph from the file, and Marcus's head snapped up like he'd seen a ghost. The clerk moved toward the bench with a slow, deliberate stride, cradling a single sheet inside a transparent sleeve. It wasn't a stack of papers this time, not another email, not another invoice. The energy in the room shifted. Photographs carried a different weight. They weren't arguments or interpretations. They were truth frozen in time. Marcus Hale knew it. His reaction was instant, primal. His spine straightened, his eyes widened, his breath caught in his throat like a trapped animal. Judge Judy accepted the photograph without a word. She didn't turn it around immediately. She studied it herself first, her expression flattening into something colder than disappointment, something bordering on alarm. Then she placed it face up on the podium. The courtroom leaned as one. Dana felt her heartbeat stutter. It was a picture of a small front porch, cracked concrete, a rusted screen door, and Marcus standing on it. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't working. He wasn't delivering any service. He was leaning forward, hand pressed hard against the doorframe, jaw tight, face inches from the camera. A woman, blurred but unmistakably startled, stood half inside, half out, holding the door like a shield. Judy's voice cut through the stunned silence. "Mr. Hale, this is you, correct?" Marcus swallowed. That was taken out of context." "Then give me the context," Judy replied, tone lethal in its softness. Marcus opened his mouth, desperation crawling into his voice. "That woman. She owed me for a service. She'd been ignoring my calls. I went to clear things up." Dana's skin prickled. She recognized that justification. She had lived it. Judy looked down at the photograph again. "This woman," she said, "filed a complaint stating she never received the service she paid for, and that she never ordered any additional work. You claimed you never met her." Marcus shut his eyes, pained. I didn't mean that visit when I said that. You told this courtroom," Judy continued, "you had never met with that customer in person." He shook his head violently. "I misspoke. No, you lied." The bluntness stunned him. His breath turned shallow. Dana felt her hands curl into the hem of her blouse. She wasn't imagining it. This wasn't a one-time mistake or a misunderstanding. This was a pattern, a dangerous one. Judy tapped the photograph. "This image shows you confronting her on her property, aggressively. Why were you there?" Marcus's voice cracked. "I wanted to explain." "Explain what?" Judy shot back. "Your refusal to provide a refund? Your unauthorized fees? Or the tone you used in your messages?" The gallery murmured. Dana watched something inside Marcus unravel, not the arrogance that had already fallen away. Something deeper, something hollowed by the weight of exposure. He whispered, "I didn't want another complaint on my record." There it was, the truth he never intended to say aloud. Judy leaned back slowly. "So you confronted her at her home to avoid consequences?" He didn't answer. Tears brimmed in the corners of his eyes, not sorrow, but panic. Dana felt a heaviness in her chest. Not pity, not rage, something quieter. The realization of how far he'd gone to silence people like her. Judy picked up the photo again, studying it with cold precision. Then she lifted her gaze. "Mr. Hale, why were you at her home at all?" Marcus paled. "Because according to these files," Judy said, holding up another document, She never hired you in the first place." The courtroom gasped. Dana's breath froze mid-inhale. Marcus's knees nearly buckled. Judy's voice dropped to a chilling whisper. "So what business did you have standing on her porch, Mr. Hale?" The question hit Marcus like a blow he never saw coming. One moment he was gripping the edge of the defendant's table. The next he seemed to fold inward, as if the weight of Judge Judy's words had physically pressed down on him. His mouth opened, but the air around him felt too thick to breathe, let alone speak. "Mr. Hale," Judy repeated, her tone low, steady, mercilessly calm. "Why were you at the home of a woman who never hired you?" A tremor ran through Marcus's fingers. He knew there were lies you could dodge, lies you could reshape. But then there were lies that were landmines, and this one had already detonated beneath him. Dana Ruiz watched in silence, her heart beating slow and heavy. She'd seen him angry. She'd seen him smug. She'd seen him manipulative, slippery, dismissive. But she had never seen him like this. Exposed. Marcus choked, his voice barely audible. I wanted to talk to her. She posted something about my business online, something negative. It wasn't fair." Judy's gaze sharpened. "So you showed up at her house?" He winced. "I didn't mean to scare her." "But you did," Judy said, setting the photograph down with a quiet finality. "As you did with Ms. Ruiz, and as you did with multiple customers before her." The courtroom felt smaller now, the air pulled tight around the moment. The gallery watched him like a man unraveling in slow motion, not from one mistake, but from a lifetime of choosing the easy lie over the hard truth. Dana's breath trembled but didn't break. This wasn't vindication. It was revelation. Marcus wasn't careless. He was intentional. He didn't stumble into intimidation. He weaponized it. Judy leaned forward. "Mr. Hale, intimidation is not a customer service strategy. It is certainly not a conflict resolution tool. It is a pattern, a dangerous one." Marcus pressed a shaking hand to his forehead. I panicked. Every time someone complained, I panicked. I thought they were trying to destroy me." Judy's expression softened. Barely, but it wasn't sympathy. It was recognition. The moment a person finally says something true. "And instead of addressing your mistakes," she said, "you made sure they were too afraid to speak." His voice cracked. "I didn't want to lose everything." "You were never losing everything," Judy replied. "You were being asked to honor your own contract. The only thing you were in danger of losing was a lie." Marcus's shoulders slumped. His arrogance had vanished entirely, replaced with something hollow and frightened. Dana blinked back a sheen of tears. For months, she thought she was the only one who had felt small in the shadow of his temper. Now she understood. He had created that shadow for many, and it wasn't strength. It was fear disguised as dominance. Judy turned toward Dana, her tone shifting into a rare softness. "Ms. Ruiz, you carried the weight of this alone for a long time." Dana swallowed, her voice faint. "I didn't think anyone would believe me." "They do now," Judy said, "because the truth has a way of catching up, even when people run from it." Then she looked back at Marcus, her eyes steady and unflinching. "There is something Ms. Ruiz deserves to hear from you." Marcus tensed. Donna stiffened. The room held its breath. "Ms. Ruiz," Judy said, turning to her gently, "you may ask him your question." Dana stepped forward, breath trembling. She looked Marcus in the eyes and whispered, "Why did you treat me like that? What did I ever do to you?" Dana's question didn't echo. It didn't need to. It landed in the courtroom like a soft drop of water hitting stone. Quiet. but with the power to carve through everything beneath it. Why did you treat me like that? What did I ever do to you? Marcus Hale froze. Not physically. Physically, he slumped, eyes unfocused, shoulders caved inward. But something deeper inside him stopped, stalled, broke. For months he'd talked over Dana, dismissed her, twisted her words, threatened her into silence. He controlled every conversation, every narrative, every inch of ground he stood on. But this wasn't a confrontation. This was a human question, and he had no armor for it. He swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing painfully. I didn't think... Judy's voice cut through, steady but not sharp. Mr. Hale, look at her when you answer. Marcus lifted his gaze. Dana had never looked smaller, or stronger. She wasn't demanding revenge. She wasn't even asking for justification. She was simply asking why. His lips parted, his jaw trembled. He exhaled, a sound halfway between a sob and a gasp. I thought, he whispered, I thought you were someone I could shut down. Dana blinked, tears gathering, not from pain, from recognition. She had suspected it. Hearing it made it real. Marcus continued, voice cracking. Every time someone complained, I felt cornered. I thought they were trying to ruin me, and you... He swallowed hard. You seemed quiet, the kind of person who'd back off if I pushed hard enough. Dana's mouth trembled. It was the cruelest kind of honesty, the kind that didn't excuse him but revealed him. I wasn't trying to hurt you, he said, wiping his eyes with the heel of his hand. I was trying to protect myself, my business, my image. Judy raised an eyebrow. By threatening her? Marcus shook his head quickly, as if trying to deny the undeniable. I didn't see it as threatening, at least not at first. I told myself I was just being firm. I told myself she was overreacting. Dana's voice cracked. I was afraid of you. Marcus's face crumpled. I know, he whispered. I knew, and I kept going anyway. A hush fell over the courtroom. Not judgment, not sympathy. Something heavier. The weight of a truth that had been buried too long. Dana wiped her eyes. I just wanted you to treat me like a person, not an obstacle. Marcus bowed his head, shoulders shaking. I'm sorry. It wasn't loud. It wasn't polished. It wasn't strategic. For the first time, it sounded real. But the moment wasn't about forgiveness. It was about clarity. The emotional unraveling that followed the factual one. Judge Judy let the silence settle before she spoke. Her voice was firm, but carried a thread of gentleness. Ms. Ruiz deserves honesty, and this courtroom deserves accountability. She turned fully toward Marcus. Mr. Hale, we are approaching the end of this proceeding, but before I deliver judgment, there is one final statement I need to make to you. Marcus lifted his head, eyes red, breath unsteady. The gallery leaned in, anticipating the final strike. Dana braced herself. Judy leaned forward, her expression unreadable. Because before the verdict, she said, you need to understand exactly what you've done and what it has cost. Judge Judy didn't speak for a long moment. She let the truth of the last 12 sections settle into the courtroom like dust finally able to land after a storm. Marcus sat hunched, broken open in a way he hadn't expected. Dana stood quietly, hands clasped, the weight of months slowly shifting off her shoulders. Then Judy inhaled, slow, controlled, and the room straightened with her. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a gravity that made every sound in the courtroom vanish. Mr. Hale, she began, do you know what arrogance looks like? Marcus blinked, unsure if he should answer. Judy continued anyway. It looks like someone who believes consequences are for other people, who think silence can be bought, fear can be wielded, and truth can be rewritten. Marcus lowered his gaze, shame pulling him inward. She continued, the words neither loud nor cruel, just devastatingly precise. You built a business not on trust, but on intimidation. When someone questioned you, you didn't fix the problem. You attacked the person. You tried to guilt them, threaten them, scare them. Her hand lifted the photograph again, just slightly. Showing up at a stranger's home because she criticized you? He winced. His shoulders curled inward. Judy set the photo down with surgical calm. That is not customer service. That is not conflict resolution. That is fear. Fear turned outward. Fear weaponized. Dana's throat tightened as Judy turned her attention briefly to her. Ms. Ruiz, you carried this alone, and instead of compassion, he gave you contempt. Dana nodded, blinking back tears. She didn't want pity. She wanted truth, and she was finally getting it. Judy looked back to Marcus. You said you were overwhelmed. You said you panicked. You said you thought she was someone who would back down if pushed. Marcus nodded weakly, the words echoing painfully inside him. That is not panic, Judy said sharply. That is entitlement. He inhaled shakily, eyes glistening. You underestimated her, Judy continued. You underestimated all of them. And what did it cost? Marcus whispered. Everything. Judy didn't disagree. Arrogance always costs everything, she said, almost gently, because arrogance blinds you to the cliff you're walking toward until you're already falling. Dana closed her eyes. There it was, the truth made whole. Judy straightened her posture, and the shift rippled through the room like thunder. Now, she said, we assess consequences. Marcus stiffened. Dana held her breath. Judy's voice carried the authority of decades. This court does not tolerate intimidation. It does not tolerate deception. And it certainly does not tolerate patterns of abuse disguised as policy. She folded her hands. Mr. Hale, what happens next is not punishment. It is clarity. His expression crumpled in understanding. This, Judy said softly, is justice. Her hand hovered above the gavel. The entire courtroom leaned forward. She lowered her voice to a chilling whisper. And justice begins with the verdict. Before you hear the final verdict, tell me this. Can someone like Marcus truly change, or do they simply learn to hide their arrogance better? The courtroom felt suspended, as if gravity itself had paused to hear what Judge Judy would say next. Marcus Hale sat motionless, hands limp on the table, the remnants of his arrogance scattered around him like broken glass. Dana Ruiz stood quietly beside the podium, her breath steady now, her chin lifted not in pride, but in long-delayed relief. Judge Judy lowered the gavel, but did not strike it. Instead, she folded her hands and looked directly at Marcus, not with anger, not with pity, but with an unwavering clarity that stripped away the last of his defenses. Mr. Hale, she began, your actions have consequences, real ones. Not the imaginary catastrophes you claimed would destroy you, but the consequences of choices you made, again and again, even when people asked for nothing more than honesty. Marcus closed his eyes. The words hit him harder than any punishment could. Judy continued. You intimidated those you owed. You overcharged people who trusted you. You lied to customers, to this court, and to yourself. You used fear instead of professionalism. And when confronted, you doubled down rather than take responsibility. The gallery sat silent, absorbing every word. Judy turned to Dana. Ms. Ruiz, you did what many were too afraid to do. You stood up, you told the truth, and you endured months of pressure from someone who thought power was the same as protection." Dana's eyes glistened, but she stayed steady. Judy inhaled, straightened her shoulders, and delivered the verdict. "This court rules fully in favor of the plaintiff, Ms. Ruiz." Marcus sagged backward, as if the breath had been knocked out of him. "You will refund her payment in full," Judy continued, "plus additional damages for emotional distress." Dana's hands trembled, not from fear, but from the shock of hearing justice spoken aloud. "And," Judy added, her voice gaining a cool finality, "your business practices will be reported to the appropriate consumer oversight authorities. They will decide whether further action is warranted. And from what I've seen today, they will have much to say." Marcus's lip quivered. His eyes filled. He whispered, "I never meant for it to go this far." Dana looked at him, truly looked, and saw a man who had finally collided with the truth he'd been sprinting from. Not a villain, not a monster. A man undone by his own arrogance. Judy's voice softened just slightly, enough to carry the moral she had waited 15 sections to deliver. "Mr. Hale, no one destroyed you. You did that yourself. Not because you were overwhelmed, but because you refused to listen, refused to learn, and refused to treat people with dignity." He bowed his head, shoulders shaking. Dana exhaled, her entire body releasing tension she had carried far too long. The verdict wasn't revenge, it wasn't victory, it was truth, finally acknowledged, finally seen. Judy raised the gavel. "This matter is now concluded." The strike was crisp, final, echoing through the courtroom like a seal being pressed onto the end of a long, painful chapter. Dana gathered her folder, holding it gently now, no longer as a shield, but as proof she had survived something bigger than a bad business deal. She glanced at Marcus one last time, not with hatred, but with the calm relief of someone stepping out of a storm into clear air. As she walked toward the exit, the courtroom doors opening to warm light beyond. Judy's final words lingered in the air like a truth everyone recognized, but few ever say aloud. Arrogance can build a kingdom for a moment, but truth always survives it.